Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. For this week's Skeleton Crew live reaction and review, we're going to be talking about everything that happened here in the Skeleton Crew episode 3. So if you guys have not seen it, make sure you go watch the episode, come back. You can watch the episode and still join us for tonight's hour and a half ish long stream. So go do that and then join us for a full spoiler discussion right now. Of course, this is always a live Q&A as well, so make sure you're sending in your thoughts on everything that happened in Skeleton Crew into the chat. We will try to get to all of your comments, but as usual, there will probably be too many comments and not enough time. So we will try to do our best, but if you want to make sure you get a chat on tonight's stream, send in a super chat. Helps out the channel and you get bumped up to the top. Another way to do so is to join one of our Patreon or YouTube membership tiers. You will get priority access in the comment section as well as on the posts from Patreon too. If you want to comment there, we will include your comments with a higher priority. Um, but yeah, so join us there and make sure to keep coming back every single week for Skeleton Crew coverage. If this is your first time finding us or you're watching this on replay, we go live every single week right after the episodes end, and we will be covering the remainder of the show. All right, let's get into Skeleton Crew episode 3 tonight. And this one was called Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem. It's directed by David Lowery once again. And in this episode, it does move the plot forward. It focuses mainly on the escape from the asteroid or the space station on this floating in the middle of space, and the kids and Jude Law kind of forming a team, getting an understanding of each other. A lot of the things we were speculating about last week were confirmed in this episode, which I'm glad they didn't like make these kind of obvious little mysteries something that we're having to kind of guess about the entire season. They reveal it all right off the bat. Jude Law is the captain who gets mutinied in the first episode. He has a couple different names. They call him Crimson Jack, or the owl creature Kim calls him Crimson Jack. I believe the other pirates call him Captain Silver. So and then he also has, of course, John and Norwood. So there's that, and then we have further confirmation that the planet that the kids are from at Aden is separated from the rest of the galaxy. They're blocked off by this barrier. They have no communication in or out. They have no idea that the Empire existed. They think Alderaan is still around. There are all these reveals in terms of that. So we do have a confirmation once again of the fact that all these things that we were talking about for like 2 hours last week, they're all crystallized in this episode. Now we get to speculate about more stuff. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Sanak, first for your review, your thoughts. What was your immediate reaction after watching Skeleton Crew episode 3?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of fun with this episode. I was definitely rooting for a little bit more of like the conspiracy angle to kind of kick in, especially with the adults. And it seemed like we'd get there with some of that early initial preview with the adults. But really, all it was is just like the droids kind of shutting them down, saying it's forbidden. Your children have gone past the barrier. It's forbidden travel with a hyperspace capable ship. It's forbidden, right? So yeah, that was kind of where we left it at. Not really any connection yet between Fern's mother and Wim's father, especially since we've kind of seen that highlighted in the trailers and the promos yet. So I'm hoping that's a little bit more what happens immediately in the next episode. I wish there was a little bit more sprinkled in there, what's happening directly on at Atten. It was mostly just seemingly in one of the kids' houses. So yeah, that was a little bit less than what I expected. But everything with the kids was really fun. I like everything about Port Borgo. Again, I can't stress enough how great the CGI looks. Like the depth, the physical sets. They know how to use their volume when they need to use it. You can see them walking. It's fleshed out. It's filled with every nook and cranny. And I think that's what really makes this fun because you can see all these little intricate things that might become Easter eggs by the time you finish watching it, or have little connections, just like we saw in the premiere episodes, to stuff from Legends, to stuff from all throughout Star Wars history, and some new things that can maybe lead into the New Republic second half of the story with all the TV shows and movies and maybe even stuff with the sequels and entirely new things that could be mined later on. So I like it when a Star Wars world likes to remind us that hey, everything up to it and after it, we'll include it, right? That's what I really liked about the location. It was nice to really see that dynamic play out, and I think it was really good to see KB kind of step forward a little bit more. Fern, Neil, Wim have already kind of crystallized in a lot of ways with those first two episodes. KB really hasn't, and she's kind of been playing with that. Like, is she more of a droid-like character? Is she more a human? Right? And that's kind of been like the whole intrigue about her in the marketing, and now you get to see a little bit more of that balance there, what she kind of favors in certain moments, when sometimes just her human instinct kind of takes over. So I thought that was really cool seeing a little bit more about her character, especially in relation with Kim and all that. Yeah, I mean, Jod Nanawood is, it's even less of a rolling off the tongue than I expected because I was saying Nanawood, and I guess it's very clearly another alias that Jude Law's character is using. Like you said, there's three names that we hear, and just how many more there are, we don't know. Yeah, it was really fun going to this like remote moon after building up some of that rapport, seeing him seemingly use the Force a lot of times, even convincing KV about that. But Kim's like location, Kim's little area, that was really cool. It was very interesting seeing like almost like a historian that's aware of all these different things and is collecting them as an owl, kind of playing with that, like, oh, owls are knowledgeable and all that. Great design, really was great design. I thought the CGI on Kim was really solid, but seeing like how she's trying to piece together little things about the kids using the patches and all that, I thought that was really fun. That feeds into that whole mystery adventure that we're looking for. We're trying to solve it here. And like you said, they aren't like holding back on like some of the more obvious ones. Now they're kind of teasing out just how much these kids really know, just how much their society has kind of let them know, and just how much they haven't, as opposed to just being like, oh, we're stuck in like a pre the Phantom Menace time. Like they know a little bit. They know about Alderaan. They know about Coruscant. They just don't know where in the timeline they almost are, which I thought was pretty interesting. And the kids kind of figuring out maybe their parents' role has been kind of tied to the money on the planet, and that's why like everything around it has seemed very statistical, has seemed very finance related. The gears are turning for everybody here, and everybody's kind of on different paths here. But it was nice that like the kids are like, we don't trust you at all, man. Like, sure, Wim does. Neil kind of just follows what Wim says, but you need to do more for us. And, ending with him saying, like, I'm lost too. I'm just trying to figure out my way. I'm not just in it for the treasure, even though he kind of is. It's nice that they're not like completely like, oh, carried away by like kind of like the glamour of him using a couple force tricks here and there. There's more to excavate in his character. And that's what I expected. I expected us to kind of get this three-dimensional character over time, and one that they might not necessarily love by the end, but one that they're, willing to like stick with, or at the very least give him a second chance, a benefit of the doubt. So yeah, this was a strong transition episode. This is what really got the kids onto the mystery at least. I'm looking forward to the fourth episode, at least jump starting the parents in a really strong way, because I still feel like they could have used it like another minute or two with them.
Yeah. And I think we'll get more of them next episode. I do. I think now that we have a possible plotted course towards at Adden, which I don't think they're immediately going to get back to the planet right away in the next episode, but we have a direction now, we have a heading, and so I imagine the mystery will continue to unfold. Even though it feels like we just started the show, next week will be the halfway point through the season already. So we'll start to get some more answers towards what will be in the second half of the show. But yeah, this episode went almost exactly as I expected it to. We got so much Jude Law. It was the Jude Law episode to have that full reveal of who this character is, what type of a scoundrel is he, what type of pirate is he. I love the kind of classical pirate names for him too, with Crimson Jack. Like that's just such a, you know, typical classic pirate name. Definitely sounds like an alias, and that's why Kim knows him as that. Then there's Captain Silvo, there's Captain or there's John Nanawood. So there's all these different things about this character. There's so many shady things about this character right off the bat that you can't really trust a single thing about him, even the very obvious, like, should be believable uses of the Force. And I am leaning towards the fact that he is a Force user, but he's definitely not a Jedi. And I think we all knew he wasn't a Jedi. But I think last week we talked about, at best, at the biggest stretch, he's some type of Jedi who might have either been the relative of a former Jedi, the son, an offspring, a nephew, a niece, or somebody who was like a youngling during Order 66 and somehow survived because maybe they were off planet. Maybe heck, even like a Jedi recruit, like a youngling recruit who survived Order 66 and never even made it to Coruscant type of thing. But I don't think he's really in any way affiliated with the Jedi Order. He seems to know a little bit about the Jedi, but he's making up a lot of things as he's going, which is also quite fun. And Jude Law is doing a great job inhabiting this type of scoundrel. We haven't seen him really play a scoundrel before. He is, I mean, he did do um, Captain Hook, right? But he
Yeah.
didn't, like, that's a more recent role. Like, he's known as the suave, very much like Hugh Grant. He's very much so like the rom com suave British guy and everything. And so now seeing him embrace this side, kind of the other side of a lot of the more British villain type characters, I'm really enjoying what he's turned in so far. Enjoyed a lot more things about this episode as well. Some of the classical creature designs, like seeing Ishi Tib, some of the newer ones, and I did really like Kim. I thought Kim was a cool character. I liked the combination of practical and CGI. I liked the like close up on her hand as looked like a practical uh, puppet of some kind on her hands. And then when you get into her face too, it's much more detailed than I expected. A little bit of a tweak on just a traditional like owl looking creature. So that was kind of cool. I'm not sure if we knew that the other, the Shistavanen was named Brutus, but makes a lot of sense.
I think we heard it in the first episode.
Yeah,
Like,
I
yeah.
didn't pick up on it, but it makes a lot of sense because he backstabs uh John Nanawood. So yeah, there's a lot of fun things in this episode. Adding confirmation that it's part of the one of the old Republic treasure planets. So there's like this new kind of lore piece that there are a bunch of planets that all the old Republic's wealth were dumped on, and a bunch of them were destroyed, and Atten is the one that's left, and that's one of the reasons why it's hidden itself from the rest of the galaxy. And I think that's a pretty cool little tidbit. There's obviously something going on there with the supervisor, and I would imagine the supervisor in this kind of droid force is using the utopic society that is at Atten to kind of subjugate the people and almost force them into servitude to serve a higher purpose. They're probably making all this money for the supervisor, whoever it is, or if it's a droid, and they're profiting, but everybody else is living a fairly happy, modest lifestyle, but uh, not necessarily getting what they could out of the wealth of their planet. So I imagine we'll learn a lot more about that next episode. But overall, this was another fun episode. I thought the pace was also quite good. A solid 40-ish minute episodes, like 37, 38 with credits. So that's a decent place for this show. I think the show can make a good run off of 36 to 42-minute episodes because of the way it's structured and the type of show it is, the type of adventure show it is. It's not going to be super heavy on lore. And I think even some of the things it's given us so far, that's all this show's going to do is like give us little tidbits, give us little information about maybe the old Republic, maybe some High Republic era connections, maybe some connections to whatever Palpatine ultimately did with some of the wealth of the previous Republic. Tie some things in, and I think name drop a lot of stuff, but I don't think it's going to be having sequences where you have full lore explanations about the old Republic, right? We're not getting that type of story here. So I think here you can skate by just doing name drops and hints, and you don't have to explain everything because this isn't a show that's going to give you those answers. It's kind of posing more questions than it's going to give you. And I think that's an okay trajectory for this type of show. But we'll see. Hopefully, it stays around this time. I would like more longer episodes. I would prefer it to clock in closer to 40, 42 minutes, but I'll take 37, 38 as long as we're not going back down to like the 28-minute episodes that we had for the second one last week and we had most of the acolytes. So overall, enjoyed this week. Thought it was a really fun time, a good continuation, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the mid-season finale has next week for us. Let's pass it over to all of you again. For those of you just joining us, this is a stream that is led by your guys' questions and the conversation around this week's episode of Skeleton Crew. So send us in anything you would like to discuss, whether it's some Easter egg you found in the episode, a prediction you have for the rest of the season, a prediction you have for episode 4, anything you would like to discuss, send it into the chat. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to make sure you get your chat on tonight's stream, send in a super chat, helps the channel, and you get bumped up to the top. You can also join our Patreon or YouTube membership tiers, and it will give you priority chat positioning here. But of course, we will try to get to everybody as much as we can, but we do usually run out of time in the hour and a half to 2 hours we are on these streams. But we'll start at the top, excuse me, with Anthony Tiff, who says, just got done watching. Pretty solid episode, in my opinion. Was not too long nor too short. About 40 minutes, which is longer than episode 2 was. Completely agree. I thought it was a well-paced episode. Hopefully it stays around this or a little bit longer. But yeah, episode 2, I think we would have all been complaining about episode 2 had it not come out with episode 1, because episode 1 was a longer episode, episode 2 was a shorter episode, made for kind of an even split of around like 39, 40 minutes ish between the two. But if episode 2 was by itself, which is I imagine one of the reasons why they paired it with episode 1 as a same day release, I think we'd all be complaining the same way we have constantly about Disney Plus episode lengths.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like that discourse is gonna necessarily go anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode is back down to like 26, 27. Especially now that you've really gotten like the legwork needed for that dynamic between Jod and the kids. And now we know like there's gonna be multiple people, crews, and groups that are all kind of interested in chasing after the ship, which we know from Lego sets is the Onyx Cinder, but I don't think we've heard it quite yet in the show. So yeah, pretty excited for this length to remain. I would expect hopefully closer to like 30, 32, 33 if that is like the compromise. I still think that works for the kids, the tone of the show, and maybe if you want to keep longer episodes, make sure those are the ones that feature the parents and like more of that serialized significant storyline, and where the tone might be a little bit more serious and definitely filled with conspiracy angles than not necessarily here with the kids who, they're picking and choosing what they want to believe, and they're not necessarily on the same path with each other, and let alone with Jude Law's character. So, yeah, hopefully not too short moving forward.
Anthony also says the owl alien is new and cool. First we got werewolves, now we have owls. And Jude Law's character is definitely not a Jedi. It's cool to see someone not affiliated with any Force organization who follows his own way. He's for sure a Force user, though. Yeah, and I think you're right. That's where I'm leaning towards too. I do think he can use the Force, and I would kind of hope he can at this point. Like I know it's part of the mystery, and I'm glad they threw out every possible way that people could fake using the Force. I thought that was, this show has been fairly self aware. Like especially this episode, I felt like they pretty much any questions we had about plot or how is this character doing this or how is this happening last week, almost all of them were answered here in this episode, and they keep the mystery moving forward without us being bogged down by kind of obvious little blatant mystery boxes. So I thought this episode did a great job of that. But I am interested in him being a Force user who knows how to do things like distract people, knows how to float a key to himself, has a little bit of luck maybe through the Force, but also is somebody who might not be so attuned with the living force, right? Can't sense people around the corner right away unless he's probably fully concentrating. There are flaws to Jude Law as a force user that do still make you question if he is a force user or not. So I at this point I'm kind of hoping he is, and he's just somebody who lost his way or was just never found because he was born so far in the Outer Rim. He's never found by Palpatine nor the Jedi Order. But yeah, I would be okay with the twist, but I'm with you, Anthony. I think he is a Force user.
Same boat as you guys. I do think he's a Force user. I think he's not a Jedi at this point, and he never was because he doesn't really have the temperament or the inclination to even want to do good. Like, this is the closest to being good. Him kinda taking advantage of the kids and their situation, their resources, which, again, are not that great either, because he's kinda forced to go back, at SM-33 and those floating bubble ships. Yeah, it's a mess for him. Like, he's desperate. He's kinda talking it off like, you know, "Why would I escape if I didn't have a means of escape?" It's like, "Alright, buddy." Like, you're just talking to talk, right? That you're trying to put on the aura, the persona that as a character like Wim would kind of fall into and fall first. So yeah, I wasn't surprised by how it went and how his abilities were kind of used. I like that scene that was there with KB where he's like, "Are you awake? Are you asleep?" And then he's like talks to her, and she's like, "I don't believe you. I've calculated. It doesn't make sense, right?" And it's like, yeah, but then he turns on the lights. Like, is he just able to use like magnets? Is he using something like in the comics with like the Ascendant technology where it looks like they can mimic the Force? I think that would just be like too complicated, too intricate. It should be more so that like this is someone who got the Force and is very opportunistic about it and never used it, right? Never connected to the heart of it, never connected to what it means to him, what it means to uh, use the abilities, to be connected to everybody, right? It'll be very interesting to see if that's maybe why he kind of almost got pushed into this role of captain. He kind of like kinda says, like, "I'm alone just like you, like, I've been left like this, I'm lost as well." And what does that really mean? Does that mean, like, he's lost and wandering in life, or lost in, like, this is the only life that he ever had, and the reason why he shot up the captain is because he was able to discern where, "Oh, here's a little bit of treasure. Oh, this person's sweating, maybe we
Mhm.
gotta do this," like, and now maybe the Force isn't working the same as it used to for him. Maybe that's why his crew has been lean and hungry, and they ended up with that opening shot where they thought they have a ship full of credits and there wasn't, oh, the logic was there for him, like, oh, the mag locks, everything, and all that. And that's maybe how he's trying to fill in the gaps of where his maybe initial experiences with the Force and sensing things was a little bit more stronger, let them have a little bit more fortune as a pirate band. But, over the years, it kind of slipped away and, he doesn't know why he even has the Force and how to, like, make sure it stays at, like, a stable level for him and his needs.
And I think we see a lot of those factors with Force users who don't discover that they're Force users really until they're older or they're
Yeah.
teenagers. We see that it's mostly a kind of book thing in order to explain away things. But we've saw it with Ezra and Rebels where he slowly, he has this luck on his side. He's able to do certain things that aren't explainable. You see it with Anakin. He can pod race, he has reflexes, but he can't pull things to him or push things to him, but Jod can. So,
Yeah.
where did he learn some of that? Did he find maybe ancient texts about the Jedi and was like, this is kind of similar to what I feel. Let me see if I can learn how to do certain things. Did he have a teacher? Did the teacher die? Did he have like I think it would be kind of interesting to have like a full series of captains who all had like force abilities, and that's maybe one of the reasons he was like plucked out and put in the kind of like a captain in training is because the previous captain had force abilities and kind of sensed the
Mm.
potential in him. I think there are some things around all of that that you could play with. But yeah, like, whether it's Darth Bane, he was a full adult when he figures out he has the force. He's just good at cards and they pick it out. So like, yeah, there are a lot of examples of that type of thing, and I would really find it interesting to have our first true like on-screen full-grown adult who is discovering they have the force through or I mean he knows he has the force, but this how does he use those gifts when he's not aligned to specific faction? Like even Sabine recently getting the force, she's now part of the Jedi, right? She's not fully Mandalorian, fully Jedi. She's part of a faction. So I'm excited to see somebody who has the Force who's just completely out for themselves, but doesn't necessarily serve the light or the dark, just kind of uses it for their own needs when they have to, but still would rather rely on the blaster over some type of Force trick. Anthony says Liam was right about him being the captain, but is his true name Salvo, Nawood, Crimson Jack, or none of the above? I think we're gonna. I don't know. I'm not sure what his true name is. I don't think saying that scares me, Anthony, because then, what scares me is that all of a sudden you'll get some massive name drop and it's like some actual character from the Star Wars lore. And then I think that would ruin it a little bit. I mean, I guess it depends who it is. But if he was to just randomly get revealed to be like some big character from Star Wars Legends or a Star Wars book in the past or somebody who survived Order 66, like if he was revealed to be Swords Mandim from who Anakin supposedly kills, and his Master Skywalker, the too many of them, like
Oh
something like that.
man.
It would I just think it would ruin the mystery of the character. I like him being his own guy. So I would lean towards his name being Jod, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sold on any of the three yet. I think Crimson Jack is the least likely to actually be his name. Obviously, it would be a pirate name, but I don't think Jack is his name either.
Yeah, I mean, Crimson Jack just seems like something that just is pulled from just classic fairy tale stories. It doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me that that would be the end all be all. Salvo seems a little bit closer. I think he's just opportunistic. I even this crew might not be his like original pirating crew, right? It's kind of the same thing with like Kanan, right? He's Caleb Doom, but like for the situation that he's in, he needs to become Kanan Jarrus, and he takes that from combining different elements of like the people he's working with and living
Mm.
around, right? So yeah, yeah, it could be. It could be any of those names. It could be something new. I don't really recall any, like, pirate Jedi in the New Republic era of the EU either, so even if they did a name drop, I would kinda like it to be like, okay, he tries to make it like a big thing, and then the kids are like, "Okay, that doesn't really mean anything to us. We're from Atten," or, like, maybe he's with some X-Wing pilots or something like, "Cool, like, we don't know this family," or if they meet some Force users or something, right? I'd almost like it to be an inversion if they really are gonna play that, where it's like, nobody knows you, man. And yeah, I mean, the concept of a pirate Jedi is intriguing because it's like it kind of goes against what the Jedi are. There are kind of roguish Jedi, more militaristic Jedi, but there's never really people who, like, plunder and loot and like are in it for the money and all that as a Jedi. It just they happen to have force abilities like Amos Kanata and all that, but they're not. They might help Jedi, but they're not like, "Oh, I'm a Jedi." They're just like, "No, I got the Force too. Don't worry about it." And I hope that's his arc, that he kind of becomes that one character that isn't necessarily important for a lot of things, but like maybe becomes a resource as we get closer to this big conflict with Thrawn. Can help out the New Republic or and their allies, or if the kids get in contact with someone who becomes like a strong ally for them in the New Republic, especially with rumors that they want to do like a season two with the kids older and everything else. Um, yeah, I mean, it feels like this is a show that's going to be disconnected character wise. It might just have some key plot points and like MacGuffins or something. But Jod himself, I don't expect him to be anyone significant.
Yeah, the closest thing to like a pirate Jedi, or at least like a scoundrel Jedi that I can think of in the EU or the New Republic era would be like Kyle Katarn. But they're very
Yeah,
different characters, and he's not a pirate; he's more of a mercenary. So,
right.
um, yeah, I don't really want that to be this direction they go. And then in regards to Crimson Jack, I meant to do it before we started the stream, but I looked it up because I was like, I know I've heard that name in something Star Wars recently, and it was in the Halcyon Legacy comic book. There's the
Oh
pirate
yeah,
there
a
is
red
called
beard.
Crimson Jack.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, maybe this is since this technically takes place before then, he's kind of a young guy in that comic, and that is sequel era. So like I don't know, maybe that's Jod is a precursor to that pirate. Maybe that pirate some way is affiliated later. to Jod Wood. That character is also in Legends comics from Marvel as well. But yeah, I think maybe that's just a fun little Easter egg. But they really could have just picked that name, not even knowing that, and just done it for fun because it sounds like every pirate that's ever been in any fiction ever. So, not necessarily saying they were like, yeah, let's pull from Halcyon Legacy and the Marvel 70s Legends comics, but that is a reference that connects there. Next up, Anthony says, opinion on War of the Rohirrim coming out on the 13th looks interesting. Well, this is a Skeleton Crew specific stream, but right off the bat, I'll just say I haven't seen it yet because it hasn't come out here, and I don't know if they're doing any fan screenings yet, but I'm very excited to see it, and I will be there probably Friday night is when I'm going to go see it.
Yeah, it looks like there's some decent reviews, nothing crazy. Um, it doesn't seem like it's getting marketed the same way as a live action Lord of the Rings film would be. It's still anime is still kind of turn off for a lot of Western audiences who would be the ones ready to watch something Lord of the Rings related. So I think A Hunt for Gollum is probably the best chance. But I'm excited for it. It's a story that we kind of know, but like, what have they expanded? What have they changed? It's still Peter Jackson and uh, the writers that were involved in the original trilogy and stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, let's stick to Skeleton Crew for now.
And Anthony also says, I'm excited for Nosferatu. I am very excited for Nosferatu. Been ringing that movie all year. I think when Dune came out, I even said on live streams that I can't say it's my favorite movie of the year because I haven't seen Nosferatu, and I'm a massive Robert Eggers fan. But yeah, again, we're gonna stick to Skeleton Crew for the most part on the stream, and we can get to some other things at the end of the stream if we have time and we've gotten through everybody's Skeleton Crew questions. But appreciate those comments as well. Anthony also says, nice beanie, Liam, and nice sweater, Sanak. And then says, could this barrier be the same one built by the Celestials in Legends? Well, we get information on what the barrier is in this episode. Kim says it's a barrier full of nebula gases that hide the planet from the rest of the galaxy. And so I'm sure we'll find out more about the barrier as we go on, or at least how it's been upkept all these years. Is it just natural? Is it some type of, fog created by the droids themselves, if they are the ones that are in control? We'll see, but I do I do think there could be some ties to Legends just because the show seems like it's had more Easter eggs than most Star Wars shows have.
Yeah.
Just through the first 3 episodes, there's been a lot of Easter eggs, not just name drops, but little, whether it be, ship designs or creatures or names or the circus from the holiday special, like all these just random things that you don't necessarily need to put in, but they have. So there could be some connection, but I imagine it's going to be kind of its own thing since this show is making it such an important factor of Aden. I think they're going to go in their own direction for everything around the mystery of Aden.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'll be nice to see what they draw from. I don't know if they really want to make a huge like pull from Legends, especially that far back, especially now that they're still actively working on Dawn of the Jedi and working on the timeline of the Old Republic. Because there's no matter what, it's not going to be anywhere near as long or big. Just doesn't really make sense. It didn't really make sense even if you look at all the stories kind of stacked next to each other. But yeah, I mean, if it's far out enough that you can be vague about it and say like, oh, this is built off of the celestial technology, or like this was kept kept together, this was manufactured from that, and some stuff from the empire if they have like a little bit more of an evil slant, or like stuff you know from Palpatine's era, just when he became senator and turned chancellor or something, right? We don't know. I think the fact that they are very consciously aware of Coruscant and Alderaan does feel very Old Republic coded, but is that necessarily true? I don't know. I really don't know.
Anthony also says Wim's father's glasses reminded me of Carl Fredrickson's glasses. I didn't pay attention enough to his glasses.
Very big,
But
yeah.
yeah, They must have been really big. And then the B1 lines were funny. Yeah, they were. I'm glad they have B1s again in one of these shows. We got to see a Mandalorian season 3. It's fun to see more prequel references as they're a little bit more accustomed to now connecting prequels back into these shows. I'm appreciating that for sure.
Yeah, it's fun just seeing all the tie-ins, especially with droids. Just how many eras you can have here, and I mean, who knows which era SM-33 really is from? We don't really know yet the age of the ship and how old he is, right? It seems the fact that it's been buried, it could be super old, but it could have just been there 30 years ago. Just happened to happen. They built over it, or they're like, it's defunct now. Don't worry about it. It'll be covered up, or they forgot about it. Adam might be bigger than we even know. It just I would lean to it being a bit older, but oh, looks like we have the Star Wars channel here. Leaving a little eyes comment. Hello there, Star Wars channel. Hope you're enjoying our own little discussion and review of the latest episode of Skeleton Crew.
Jar Jar Binko says, "Hello, lads. Hi there." Pigs18 says, "Nah, I think the supervisor is not evil. If there's only one planet that survived beyond the barrier, then it almost has to be." I'm confused. So you're saying you don't think the supervisor? I think the supervisor's not evil. I'm confused what the last part of your comment is about, but I don't know if the supervisor is evil. I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that it's a droid. I think it could be like a droid hive mind, maybe some droid that took over, or droid revolution, something like that. Could have dominated the planet during the fact, like when all these other planets were destroyed or taken over. I think that's something that we could have seen. And we know, I mean, we know there's a giant storehouse of treasure, right? We've seen that in the trailer. So when does that come into play? Is that at Aten? Is at Aten the place that they moved all the treasure from all these other planets? I think all of those are connections, and maybe this supervisor is either a droid or somebody, some family that went rogue during the Old Republic and attacked all the other treasure planets and brought all the treasure over to their planet and kind of took control of this whole fortune and then hid themselves off from the rest of the galaxy so nobody else could find them. You would imagine that we talked last week too about hyperlanes and how in the High Republic, hyperspace travel has changed so much from where it was in Legends, where it's so much, more ancient, where they're still mapping and exploring the Outer Rim in the High Republic, which is only, at furthest 300 years, 350-ish years before Phantom Menace. And in most of the story, in phase one and phase three, 200-ish years before the Phantom Menace. And they're still mapping the Outer Rim. They're still figuring out different hyperpaths and hyperlanes. So did something happen to set that back? Or in the Old Republic, do they not have very much access to the Outer Rim? So it would indeed, if they were like hiding treasure on planets, it would can make a little bit more sense to hide it in the Outer Rim where people aren't going as often, where it is kind of a place that you couldn't just stumble upon easily because you had to have the right coordinates or the right path or the safest lane to travel through. So I think there are a lot of logical reasons in lore to do that. But if they were so segregated already from the rest of the galaxy, right, stuck out here patrolling this treasure, there's a possibility that they could have just destroyed everybody else, taken all the treasure for themselves, kind of had a war across these treasure planets, and then hidden themselves off for from the rest of the galaxy. It just wouldn't make as much sense why, if like the Chancellor at the time had a way to get there from the Old Republic, why nobody else went after that, or how the path to that planet disappeared completely. That's my biggest question is what did the government at the time, the actual republic at the time, what's their affiliation to to Aten that caused the planet to disappear? Because you would think they would have some way to get there even if they had this barrier around it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's where like the whole question of like what exactly is the great work in relation to Aten? Is it that, oh, we want to see incredible things come out of your planet, or is this just an outreach where this is like a colony planet? This is something that maybe Starlight Beacon or something even older in the Old Republic first made contact, and this is how they're all trying to stick together, and this is why they want us to join the Republic because we have all these wonderful riches, and we have these wonderful species who maybe 1,000 years before all the space lanes were destroyed and lost and all that. This is a thriving society, and maybe they make some initial contact, and then things go wrong. People are want to be isolationists. People don't. Is the supervisor even a droid? I don't know. It'd be pretty interesting if they kind of almost play it like the droids are little puppets in the same way like the monkeys, the flying monkeys, kind of are for Oz himself. Like it could be something really really weird where it's like a contraption of sorts being played by a single person. And this is just like the multiple eyes that really does kind of go back to that surveillance angle. But if they're good, why would they need to subjugate everyone to like a very specific, rigid, mathematical based society, right? What is about it if it's like already all processed? Are they just trying to mine this false reality and as long as possible? Are they just full of control, or is it more that that this is just the only way they feel like they're going to be safe by being isolated, by making sure no other people who are aware? Maybe it's not even that long since all these other treasure planets were bombarded or taken over or destroyed, right? So we need to know a lot more of the adult side. That's what I'm gonna say. That from what we can glean right now, it's just been a glimpse in this episode. What that
Yeah.
plays out as, what that means, I don't know.
And it's all coming from the kid's perspective too, what we do know, right? They say they're like, there's some type of analytics expert,
Yeah,
something boring, I think is what Wim says. So, we have it from the kid's perspective. We don't even know what their true relations with the government is. We don't know what the government is actually like. There is, in my head, if it was kind of a big brother situation or some type of great supreme intelligence from like the Kree and Marvel, where you have some type of overlord AI who's controlling the whole planet. Maybe they are giving these pretty intelligent people problems that are unsolvable in part of their work, and that's maybe one of the reasons why they're so buttoned up and so
yeah,
focused on trying to crack these things that can never be solved because these intelligences are giving them kind of busy work, but they don't know it yet, just to keep them occupied and using their labor to keep themselves wealthy or keep themselves in this utopia, right? And I think there will be those mystery elements continuing to push forward. I do think next episode is when we get a little bit more of at least the plan for trying to find the kids again. Like we have that scene in the trailer between Wim's dad and Fern's mom talking about, how they're going to need to find him. I thought we were going to get that in this episode because it started out with that
yeah.
discussion initially with the droid, but I do think that's next episode. It seems like Wim's dad and that final shot with him before you cut to the rest of the episode with the kids and with Jod, he's thinking about, okay, it looks like he's not happy with the response they've gotten from the droids, right? So we're gonna see how that ultimately unfolds, and hopefully we'll find out if the parents have ever met, especially Fern's mom, if she's ever met the supervisor, because I don't think so. I think the supervisor just seems like this figurehead that maybe is being propped up, that nobody has actually met. So yeah, that'll be continue to be probably the biggest intrigue for the next couple episodes at least. Uh,
Yeah,
and
I mean, I'm sorry, I just want to add one thing. I mean, it could be very much like the Loki season one gimmick, right? Like, oh, the gods taking control of the
yeah,
TVA, and like, but what does that really mean? Who's actually there? Like, is it just a system in place, or is there someone behind the supervisor, and that supervisor is that facade? Is it being manipulated? We don't know, right? Like, that's what that's again where we need to actually see a little bit more of the adult POV, because right now everything about the kids, it's robots. They're supposed to help us or tell us what not to do. But what about the people who are a little bit more grown up and deal with the reality of the world and the work that's required to keep Atten going. All right, that's where we'll finally really see what these droids are about. So far, we've only seen from their perspective, like they violated a rule, they're gone, we can't help you, it's forbidden, it's forbidden, right? But what does that mean in other spheres of their life? We don't know yet. And that's once we see a little bit more of that, then we can kind of make those threads a little bit more clear about how the society even functions.
Exactly. And we can hopefully figure out um, where they're going with. I think the droid angle in particular is something really key. And I think the Jedi also is another key because I think
Yeah,
the way they prop up the Jedi in their schools, within kind of entertainment, within historical texts, the way they're so hyped up, I don't think it's just because it's the old Republic separated from the current Republic, the new Republic, the Empire. I think maybe you could have some type of twist where if it is a Wizard of Oz situation, the person on top is maybe a former Jedi. Maybe a
yeah,
Jedi warlord, a Jedi general. We know those, exist at the end of the Old Republic in Legends. Somebody like General Hoth. It wouldn't be somebody like exactly like him, but maybe some Jedi warlord who had enough at the end of the Old Republic, had enough after fighting the Sith, and they ended the Sith, and ultimately kind of took it upon themselves to create some utopia, some misplaced Jedi who still worships the ideals of the Jedi, but basically has fallen to the dark side, right?
mm,
That would be interesting as well. I think the droids and the Jedi are the two keys to this show so far. But back to the chat, we have Anthony who says episode 7 is apparently Jude Law's favorite episode. Do you think it's because it reveals his origin story? I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I haven't heard that was his favorite episode, but if it is, I don't know if I like episode 7 as like a tell all, like a backstory episode. We've done that recently with the Acolyte, with the penultimate episode being the whole mystery reveal. I don't know if the show set that up yet for like Jude Law to have some massive reveal around his origin story. Now, it could just come out in conversation and he could embrace who he truly is, but we'll see how the rest of the show goes. But I like who he is now. Like, I like him being this kind of misfit pirate, this more suave Jack Sparrow, who's like a pirate with a heart of gold type of thing, who is out for himself but can't really say no to helping out some kids. Hopefully, he's going to make a side profit on the way. You can't really trust him, but he is also somebody who does the right thing most of the time, and that's his kind of fatal flaw. I kind of like just that version of this character, and if that type of character can use the Force, then I think it's, in another interesting layer. So I'm hoping there's not some type of giant reveal around him, but maybe it's an episode that has a lot for him to do at the very least, and it's one of the larger episodes for his screen time, or maybe a pivotal character reveal for other characters, or a pivotal reveal in the mystery that he has to make a big decision in for his character. But I'm hoping there's not some giant like origin reveal for that character. I think he's cool as he is, and the simpleness, the simplicity of the show is, I think, one of the things that will ultimately make it uh, great at the end. Will ultimately make it a fan favorite at the end. It's going back to the Mandalorian nature of like, it's a Star Wars show. We're having fun. We're embracing things that are part of the root of what Star Wars created and also was inspired by, and we are going full on in a specific genre direction with Star Wars tropes. And I think that needs to be maintained. And I don't want them to sacrifice that for some type of giant, like Jedi Sith big
yeah,
character
yeah.
reveal that ultimately connects to Thrawn and all these other things. The show doesn't need to be important. It can just be fun and its own thing.
Yeah, a lot of similar thoughts there. The only thing I could really add differently is that, it can be an origin story, but more so of like his journey into why him and all these other pirates are so obsessed with At and why they know so much. Because If this was just any pirate crew saying that, like, okay, that's one thing, but it seems like it's almost like this pirate crew in this general area of the galaxy that's obsessed. If not, then you would have had bigger players like a Maz Kanata and all that, come into play. And again, we're still asking for a Honda. Still asking for a little bit more of these notable pirate underground players to kind of come out here. But yeah, I think that's kind of what he more means by if it is supposedly an origin story. It could also simply just be that, like, the plot lines of the adults and the parents kind of line up with the kids finally. And we've seen some promo shots of Wim's father with Wim and a couple of kids on speeder bikes and all that. So maybe they get back to Atten, and now it's a little bit more about let's go into Atten, right? Everything so far with the Skeleton Crew is around the Onyx Cinder, is around these pirate ports and locations that Jod might know, but once you're at Atten, what are you gonna do? Like, are we really gonna find it? Are all the clues gonna be lined up perfectly? Will the adults be the missing link? Like, oh, you guys are here, but like, oh, we've seen that symbol. Oh, like like I want to see kind of like that's where I think like they kind of go with that Stranger Things route, where that's when all the storylines kind of coalesce around episode 6, around episode 7, which leads to like a nice extended episode and a half of a finale, right? So I think that's maybe more what he means, and that's maybe where our assumptions, everything we know, kind of blows up, and there's some new twist or something coming out of that before we get to almost like a very Goonies esque finish. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, we still haven't reached the mid season finale. That is next week.
Araya Ben Yas says, myself and Google Gemini had a great idea to say Ray's mother and Fern's mother are distant cousins to tie in the bloodlines of the Old Republic to Palpatine in episode 10 in Ray's story. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I think, again, shrinking the galaxy. Um, I would prefer this just to be its own thing, not have some massive significance to the larger Star Wars world. But I'm not opposed. I've said this in the past. I'm not opposed to Palpatine's being important in the Old Republic, but they can't. I don't want any other Palpatine to have been a Sith or a Sith follower. I think one of the great things about the Plagueis book is the Palpatine origin, is the fact that he just feels like this outcast on this beautiful planet that is Naboo before all the invasions, before all the things that he does to subjugate his own planet. He feels like this dark outlier on this utopia. And so there's a lot to that, but wouldn't mind like a Palpatine name drop in an Old Republic story. But yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I appreciate you sharing it. I don't know if I personally buy it, but hey, anything is happen. It could happen in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very similar to, when Rogue One came out, people were like, oh, Jyn Erso is actually the mother of Rey. Well, can't really work out that way, not only just timeline, but also 'cause she dies, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, maybe there are connections. I do like the point what you're saying about like Old Republic bloodlines kind of coming into play into the future of Rey and her order and the galaxy and the republics and governments in play. Yeah, that I can see. But it's been a common criticism of Star Wars even in the 70s and 80s that like everything is tied together. Everyone knows everybody, and the only people who don't are somehow Luke, Han, and Leia. And even though Leia should be the one who knows everybody because she's like a politician. She's been to the Imperial Senate and all that. So, uh, yeah, I mean, I think Ray's origin works for me because it's so unexpected. It is because Dathan escapes from Exegol after being cast aside, and he's like a sterile clone essentially, but turns out he's not. Turns out he just because he's sterile in the Force doesn't mean he's sterile to the Force and that bloodline connection with, the right partner and the offspring coming out of it. So I think that's enough for her story. But if you're saying like stuff with Palpatine and what he's been doing, what his family's been doing, maybe kind of going the opposite direction, and we see like, oh man, like Ray's early Palpatine ancestor that somehow has a role to play on Admiral that was the opposite of Palpatine. He was like one of the most kind, most helpful, resourceful people out there. Had nothing to do with the Force, but it was beloved by Jedi, beloved by the Old Republic, High Republic government. Was maybe like Church of the Force or someone out there like a Santeca and the Graf family charting out lanes and expanding the worldview of the galaxy and helping out people. Like, sure, I like that because then it's like you give her something else to latch on that isn't just sullied by the fact that Palpatine is by all means everything about the Palpatine family.
And I looked up Mirror Mirror just to see if she had an official canon birth world, because that is the name of Ray's mom. And it says she's born on Hypercarn in 6 BBY, so that would make her, even if she was somehow connected to Aten, about 3 to 5, depending on when this show takes place.
Yeah.
Also, it says that she lived with her grandmother her whole life and she was very close with her grandmother. It's been almost 3 years since I've read Shadow of the Sith, so I'm sure that was probably in Shadow of the Sith in a throwaway line somewhere. But yeah, so that's officially the canon we have now. Doesn't mean you can't change it or connect it to something else, but appreciate the theory. Thank you. We always love hearing your guys' theories. Skywalker's Academy says, hello there. Hello there, Skywalker's Academy. Snips for Life says, what's going on with the people of Atten being hidden and not knowing anything? How long have they been secluded? Loving the show. Well, we don't know how long they've been secluded yet, but we do know that Wim, the kid with the curly hair, has credits given to him by his dad very nonchalantly for lunch money. And they're Old Republic credits, which means it's at least 1,000 years before the events of episode 4. So we don't know exactly how long. Like, it could be 1,000 years, it could be more than 1,000 years they've been secluded from the galaxy. We're not really sure. It could also be after that. Like, that's officially when the Old Republic era ended in Star Wars Legends, but we don't really know about when the era takes place in Star Wars canon. And we also don't know, you know, really in Legends, there's not a true like transition between the Old Republic and what the Republic is in the prequels. It's just the end of an era versus what the prequel Republic became. So you don't know necessarily, um like, if the people of Atten still consider the Old Republic the Republic when it was only, 600 years before the events of A New Hope or Phantom Menace. They could still have those same types of credits. They didn't necessarily switch currency right away. So we don't know when or where or how. I think the point really is just to be like, this is old ancient treasure, just like finding a gold doubloon in some type of pirate story or the coins in Curse of the Black Pearl. It's this ancient treasure, ancient money that nobody's seen in 1,000 years almost. How long have they been hidden away? I think we'll slowly find that mystery out, but I would guess at least 1,000 years since they have made contact with the larger galaxy. Because as we found out in this episode, they've become fairy tales and children's songs and myths and all these different things. Nobody believes that Aten exists, and I'm looking forward to finding out more concrete details. Hopefully, here in the next few episodes.
I haven't heard someone say doubloon in years, so yeah, that got my wheels turning. But yeah, it is curious because like I think the only real reference we have to like the end of the Old Republic is kind of like the defeat of Bane and canon, which has I think been kind of confirmed to be exactly 1,000. So they're definitely simplifying things, trying to make it a little cleaner as like an end point. Um, because technically, if you look at the main trilogy in EU, he kind of goes from that new Sith Wars era into his own era for a little bit there. He's at the tail end of the Old Republic, and then he's kind of at the start of what comes next. Even though there really isn't much more storytelling past him to connect us to a prequel era, kind of like we have with the High Republic in canon. So who knows? Honestly, 1,000 years is a good bet. I don't know how they'd be able to maintain that though, because like at some point, technology has to change, technology has to diverge, and a lot of their technology is familiar, like
Mhm.
terminology, everything. It seems quite familiar. So uh, yeah, I mean, I'm with Liam there. Like the currency itself could have just been in play for a lot longer, maybe like an extra 500, 600 years. But as people faded, as memories of Aten and all these treasure planets faded, that's kind of like the last remnant of like, oh, this was like proof at one point that there were planets out there who were still sticking with what they had, right? Sticking with what worked for them. And we've seen in from the very like first episode of Mandalorian that they do use other currencies, right? Aqualish people have their own and all that. So and you know you can trade in, and there is some comparable value. I think what makes these credits so much more unique is not only that they look clean and fairly well in
Yeah.
use, right? It's the fact that they can't be converted. It's too far past the point that it was something that people would have been like exchanging. What's the rates and all that, right? So that's the only real indication we have, honestly, right now that it is maybe at least 50 minimum years, 60, 70, if we're really counting just the fall of the twilight of the republic, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting how we're gonna see that uncover, if it's gonna really be from the kids or from the adults. I think so much of the kids have been saying like it's our parents just do weird math jobs. I want to know like how much is maybe their economy is just being propped up by like bad numbers or something, and you know just things are being changed after they send in reports and all that. So that's where you know sense of time, sense of direction, how old you really are, and all that could come into play, right? So, um, yeah, it'll be very interesting to know what they really are hiding on and just how they've been successfully able to do that.
Yeah, and the credits we've seen in newer Star Wars media are always they're always silver or some type of cobalt color,
Yeah,
and these are gold. So like this already, I guess, has the elevated um, value just because they are gold. And also, going back to the point about Darth Bane too, like the fall of Darth Bane in Legends is also in a similar time because the Jedi think they killed him when, I guess spoilers for Rule of Two, Darth Bane Rule of Two, it's actually Xana's cousin Darovit who she possesses to look crazy, and the Jedi kill him, and they think he's Darth Bane, but it's not Darth Bane. And then Darth Bane and Xana go into hiding for another 30 years and continue enacting their plans until their ultimate confrontation between the two of them. So, like, there is an origin point and an end point in Legends too that we can look at as the fall of Darth Bane, or at least the Jedi think is the fall of Darth Bane, the last Sith. But he ultimately perpetuates his line. So, yeah, that would be even cooler to continue to find out more name drops like that. Like I said in predictions last week, I really wanted to like a name drop for maybe some old Republic Jedi that kind of give us an indication on where the Jedi were at when Atten became secluded from the rest of the galaxy, because if they're like, "Oh, are you a great Jedi like Bastila Shan?" Then we know where they're looking. Or are you a great Jedi like General Farfalla? Then we know, okay, it's closer to Bane trilogy. Or Revan, then we know it's closer to the Mandalorian Wars. So like, yeah, we get an indication if we had some type of name drop, but I don't think we're gonna get that now at this point because they seem to have gotten past that initial speculation and hesitation with Jude Law as a Jedi. So we might not ever get that, but somebody will probably get some type of tablet that has some Arabish, and somebody will translate it, and maybe we'll get a name drop there at some point. But we're about an hour into our stream, everybody, and we're still going strong, but we don't have that many comments left to get through. So if you guys want to make sure you get some comments on tonight's stream, tonight's a great time to do so. And also, if you do have non-skeleton crew related things that you would like to talk about, since we've gotten through almost every skeleton crew thing, we can go a little bit longer talking about some other things as well if you guys still want to send in stuff to the chat. But yeah, this is another call to the chat because we only have about 5 or 6 questions left. If you want to send in as many things as you want tonight, make sure you do so. If not, we might call our stream a little bit early tonight, considering the conversation starting to come to a close. But we always appreciate your guys' questions and your comments and your theories. And thanks for joining us again tonight. So we have Anthony Tiff, who mentioned the Crimson Corsair. I think that was in relation with our conversation with Crimson Jack. And yeah, that's a character I also mentioned in my characters that could appear in this show video, and I would love to see that character come back just because I think that was one of the absolute coolest background character designs
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
anybody in the sequels, and I want to see that character come back. I love the little short story about the lost treasure of Count Dooku that has that character and his pirate gang in there, and also there's clones in his gang. Kix is in the
Yeah.
gang, so yeah, it would be really cool to get Crimson Corsair at some point. I'm still not 100% convinced we're going to really get any other pirates besides this group of pirates. I think at best is like Jod going, like we saw in this episode where he goes to Kim, going to other characters that he's like, I know a guy who could help us with this that we need. And maybe we get like a Hondo or somebody in that type of role. But because Aten's a lost planet, unless word gets out that Jod Nanawood is on the trail of Aten, and everybody's following them, trying to compete for the same treasure. And then we get a Hondo that way or other pirates that way. The mystery of Aten seems like such a far fetched thing that you wouldn't randomly see some other pirate also on the same quest. It's because these people have insider information with these kids that they're able to go on this type of journey. So unless the word gets out to the rest of the pirate galaxy that, hey, the lost treasure of Aten is out there still, um, I think this will be a little smaller scale show in terms of pirates and scoundrels and underworld appearances than I initially thought. But I do think Hondo is still a good bet, and I would love to see the Crimson Corsair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how old the Crimson Crusader would be at this point. I don't think we really know much about him just yet. Uh, he could be just a young upstart, right? Maybe someone who's been
Hmm.
inspired by Crimson Jack and was part of his crew before, picking up the trail on his own and doing things that he wants to do as with his own crew and all that. So yeah, that would be fun. I wouldn't mind that at all. But yeah, it does seem like things are going to be a little bit more smaller. The resources that they're going to go towards are, I mean, I feel like we got in the most librarian esque, character, the historian esque character. We've gotten some general area coordinates. I don't think anything specific just yet. Unless maybe that this is like, okay, you have to hop through this star lane, and then this was like a decrepit old post that you can go from here to there. Like maybe if they're trying to angle it that way with the coordinates that Kim managed to kind of conceive, even though she said there's still like 10,000 possibilities, especially KB's like, oh, but we're making great progress. 99.9% have been eliminated just by using that different language that's on your patch, Fern. Like, who knows? I'm not sure if Crimson Corsair can be brought in at this time period too. But I wouldn't mind, like, maybe, like, kinda doing how we've seen with the Spice Runners of Kijimi, where they wear the same mask or similar outfits, and it's like a legacy. It's like it continues generation to generation, right? So, yeah, could be an option. It really could. Um, but yeah, I'm more sold on a Hondo or a Maz happening at this point. It'd be awesome if the kids somehow managed to go to Takodana. I think that'd be really cool,
Yeah.
especially because we don't really explore that planet. And that should be a treasure trove of so many cool things that pirates would notice, but not necessarily, a girl from a desert planet and an ex stormtrooper on the run, right? And Han Solo, who's kind of above it all because he's New Republic at that point. So yeah, it'll be interesting who they pull in here. I just hope that they have some cool new characters just like him that kind of are there to lead the way, and it doesn't really feel like a Rogue One situation with like Hondo Baba and Dr. Ezon on Jeddah, and you're like, okay, I guess that technically works with like all the death penalties that they have, but why exactly are they forced in there? I don't know. It would make more sense for pirates and these notable pirates just because they're always on the run for the
Yeah.
latest score. But still, I'd like to avoid it feeling like it's just there because it has to be there.
And then we got the eyes from Star Wars, which was really really cool. So if they're still watching, thanks for joining our stream. Hope you're enjoying it. We appreciate you coming and checking out our content. I think that was in relation to the Crimson Jack poll that we made
Mm,
earlier in the stream. I think it popped up right after that. So maybe they were giving us a little
a little hint there.
shout out for pulling that name from the Halcyon Legacy comics. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Star Wars. If you're still watching, or you come back and check it out. Hope you enjoy the content. Multiverse is Baroque and says, "Yo, Star Wars, what's up?" And then Anthony says, "If this is the official Star Wars YouTube channel, then Star Wars lads are doing something right. Hey, we're at least getting out there. I mean, it's nice to know that people can find our streams
Yeah.
if you're looking.
Yeah.
So that's a positive for the search algorithm, at least. But yeah, very very cool to have them on the stream." Uh,
Huh?
Pigs18 says, "I was thinking of the planet in Jedi Survivor, Tanalorr, as Atten, I think, or are you comparing it to Atten? I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but Tanalorr is more of a Jedi specific planet, and it also disappears during the High Republic era. Versus this is something that supposedly disappeared during the Old Republic. So it is two very different eras that they would have been missing from. But I wouldn't mind a Tanalorr reference at some point as like a another outer rim or far off planet that exists as some type of base for something that they were hiding during the Old Republic, or special staging grounds or special training area for the Jedi. There could be cool reference there, but I don't necessarily think they're as related as maybe last week when we thought about it, because now we have the confirmation that this is an Old Republic era planet, or at least they're still using Old Republic symbols, still using Old Republic credits. And Kim basically confirms that this planet was an Old Republic treasure planet that it was separated before uh, Tanalorr would have been separated from the Republic.
Yeah, and I think what Tantalor is a little different too because it's not that it's hidden. Um, it's I think it's a little bit more so that like it's incredibly difficult to navigate through, right? That's
Yeah,
why
like
you need the
Exegol.
compasses. Yeah, it's dangerous. You go in there, and we see in Survivor that like yeah, okay, the compasses aren't working. They have to they manage to get through halfway, and then they're like, okay, you have to rely on the force and be able to shoot our way through. And Gariza's like, I okay, I'll trust you, Cal. And it's not easy, even with the compasses aligned and everything, right? And it takes a while. It's like so it's a little bit more like a center point station. It's like you need to have everything in perfect alignment with the technology, everything working perfectly for you to be able to go to Tanalorr. Now, how does that change? Now they're kind of based on Tanalorr, at least by the end of Survivor. I don't know. Maybe that does change things. But this feels more of like a mirage that's keeping in people that it's there for outsiders to kind of see what's going on, but they wouldn't be able to discern what's actually hidden beneath it. Whereas Tantalor is more like hey, you go here, you'll die, right? It doesn't really feel like that's what it's more like. It's working inside out. That at Atten is this is the only way to protect you. That we have to keep this locked away. So and it's not a natural phenomenon in the same way that the nebula kind of is around Tantalor. So I think that's a pretty big distinction. The fact that it seems like a pretty simple grid that is more there for keeping up appearances as opposed to drawing certain attention or keeping certain attention away. And at this point, who are they hiding from? That's a big question. Tantalor's not hiding from anybody. It's just if you come here, you die.
Yeah, like Exegol, it's like you need the path to get there
Right.
because of the danger. So again, this will be one more call for everybody who's still joining us tonight. Send in your last questions, your comments, your theories, anything you'd like to discuss here. We're almost to an hour and 15 minutes. We usually like to go at least an hour and a half. So if we don't get any more conversation points, I think we might wrap up a little early tonight. But if you guys want to talk about stuff, this is a good night to do it, because usually we don't get through even like 50% of the chats. So if you guys have had any pressing questions, comments, theories, anything you'd like to discuss, send it into the chat. and we will most
Maybe
likely get to it tonight.
maybe about the news from yesterday that kind of came out from Deadline if we want to talk about
Oh yeah.
that. I know people are memeing crazy about Jeremy Allen White as supposedly rotted the hut. Some rumors that he's going to be mocap today. So if you guys have seen that, you guys have some thoughts, throw it in the chat. That is definitely the most out there thing to happen in Star Wars recently. So we need to talk. So if you haven't heard, look that up and fire away your questions.
Skywalker's Academy says top 5 pirates. I'd imagine. So you're. I'm assuming you're saying any pirates in anything, not just Star Wars, because Star Wars pirates, Hondo would be number one. Han is technically kind of a space pirate.
Yeah.
Um, I'd give like a Talon card also kind of that label. Um, trying
Booster, if you really want to,
Booster Tarek, yeah,
pre errant venture. Oh, maybe even with the errant venture. I don't know.
yeah, Booster Tarek. Yeah, George Cardis. Who else? But yeah, I mean, if you're not including Star Wars characters, then Jack Sparrow and Barbossa. I love Barbossa. I just love the way Jeffrey Rush plays that character. I think the voice is perfect, so iconic. Jack's great, but Barbossa. One of the other ones I was thinking about earlier was from Assassin's Creed 4. And I think it's Edward Kenway or Conway, one of the two. It's been a long time since I played that game, but that's one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games. Such a great game. Absolutely love that character. Who else? I mean, you could go to like real pirates, Blackbeard,
Blackbeard. Yeah.
Davy Jones. I love Davy
Yeah.
Jones in the Pirates movies. I'm trying to think. You have any other ones, Sonic, that I haven't mentioned?
I can't say I'm super well versed with other pirates myself. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's some other pirate that I'm missing. Oh, I like the pirates from Resistance with some of their ship designs and all
Yeah.
that. It was very much like, hey, this is a floating ship, right? And I do like that vibe of like, hey, Star Wars doesn't have to just be locked into spaceship designs. It can be a ship that happens to be in space, right? With some very interesting like canon technology. Yeah, what is that pirate's name? Uh, what
I
I'm
can't
blanking.
remember. It's
Yeah,
been so long since I watched Resistance.
Kragan Gore, Kragan Gore, and I love the like just the design. Everyone like chipped away the warboard gang. Okay, very interesting, but yeah, and I mean they were kind of like how the First Order got a foothold in the first season, right? Like why the First Order was like used as protections because they were secretly employing the pirate gang to upend the Colossus and everything.
I was looking up famous pirates, and Anne Bonny, of course, one of everybody's favorites. Anne Bonny. Um, what's the other one? Jean Lafitte is another one that I know is referenced a lot in Disney parks. Um, yeah, I can't think of anybody else. Do you guys have another favorite pirate that we can name drop? I mean, pretty much everybody I think is Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh, I
Francis
haven't watched
Drake, kind of,
all of One
maybe.
Piece. I've only watched a couple episodes, but I've read a lot of One Piece. So
Mm.
Luffy, or Rora Zoro, Rora Noah Zoro. Good ones.
There you go. There
That's
you
good.
go.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I love pirate stuff, but I can't say I've ever been fully obsessed with like learning all about pirates. But
Yeah.
yeah, those are some good ones. And I think that's gonna wrap up our stream tonight. Unless you guys have one last thing you want to get in right before, but we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Again, if you're new or you're finding this stream, you watched it on replay, join us every single week. We go live immediately after the episodes end, usually within like 15 to 30 minutes after the episodes end. So probably somewhere between 7:30 Pacific time every single week. Join us for discussion, breakdown, reviews. Again, next week we will have predictions out again for you guys on Sunday. So check out those predictions. Got one more book review for X Wing coming out that will be for X-Wing Back to War. If you haven't checked out the other three, you can check those out: Krytos Trap, Wedge's Gamble, and Rogue Squadron. And then we have our first ever Legends Book Club live stream tomorrow night. So if you want to join us for that, if you've read Rogue Squadron or any of the Rogue Squadron books, join us for that stream tomorrow night. We can discuss spoilers and discuss all the different plot points, our favorite parts. And we kept our reviews spoiler free to keep them a little shorter. Tomorrow night, we're going to go live discussing everything about Rogue Squadron, and it will also, similarly to tonight, be about as long as you guys help us make it. We're shooting for about an hour for the stream, so come and join us if you'd like to discuss the books. We would love to have you guys there, and also stay tuned. Got more content coming out. I've got a holiday special video coming out on Friday, and then we have a Tears of the Nameless review finally coming next week, and we'll also have a book ranking for a tier list for the canon updated tier lists coming out next week finally as well. So keep an eye out for all that other content. Shorts every other day still, community polls twice a day, every day. So a lot happening here on Star Wars Lads, but we're glad you guys are enjoying Skeleton Crew. Hopefully you enjoy it next week as well, and join us again next Tuesday to discuss all the spoilers for Skeleton Crew. Thank you so much for watching this week's stream, everybody, and we will see you all next week. Good night, everyone.